Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Independence TIF Commission meeting for May 4th, 2023 to talk about the Hub Drive Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Plan. We have a couple of agenda items we need to get to first. Looks like we need to have election of officers. We need to fill a chair and a vice chair position tonight. So are there any nominations for those positions? Let's start with the chair.
Yeah, Martin, I would nominate Martin Cooney
All right.
for the chair.
All right. And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Was that all right? Very good. Further nominations? Tom, do we need to call the roll on this, or can we just do it by voice? All right. Not hearing any other nominations for chair. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, that motion carries. Now we need nomination for vice chair. That is an empty position right now, so. Anyone would like to volunteer?
Well, Martin, I would volunteer, but I certainly would think that there are other people that would be eligible to do that.
Well, Ron, I think that not hearing anyone else speak, I'm going to go ahead and nominate you then if you're interested in the position. So,
Okay.
is there a second for that nomination? Second. All right. Any further nominations? All in favor of Ron Brew for vice chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. All right, that motion carries. Before you is the minutes from the April 22nd, 2021 TIF Commission meeting that has been previously circulated. Hopefully you've got a chance to review that. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? So moved. Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Very good. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries and the minutes are approved. All right, at this point, I'd like to open up the public hearing for the Hub Drive Tax Increment Financing and Redevelopment Plan. And Mr. Martin, are you going to start with that?
Yes, I'll introduce it.
Very good.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is David Martin. I'm with the law firm of Gilmore and Bell in Kansas City, and I serve as Economic Development Counsel to the city. I'm going to give just a brief high-level introduction. You're here to consider the Hub Drive Redevelopment Plan, which is with respect to a shopping center development that's currently located at 23rd and Hub Drive. It's anchored by a grocery store and has a variety of retail strip emplacements that are next to the grocery store and a few outlots. The purpose of this redevelopment is to essentially spruce up and revitalize that shopping center and return it to use without the blight that it's currently experiencing. The highlights of this plan are a 50% sharing of the pilots. So much like the economic activity taxes, where 50% of the increase flows to the taxing jurisdictions and the other 50% is captured and used to pay redevelopment project costs. In this case, the developer has opted, in accordance with the city's economic development policy, to submit a plan that also shares 50% of the property tax increase from the outset. This formation proceedings that have taken place so far have involved the publication in accordance with the TIF Act and also mailing of notices, as well as the posting of a 4-day notice for this hearing. And at this time, I'd like to offer onto the record Exhibits 1 through 8, which evidence compliance with all of those requirements. I think we'll let the developer run through their presentation, and then we can take questions for myself, city staff, and also the developer.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to be before you to present some information about the Hub Shopping Center. My name is John Hanson. I'm with IRR Corporate and Public Finance. I'm a financial advisor to the developer and owner of the project. We have a brief presentation to run through with you that's going to cover a number of points. We'll do some introductions to who is here from the development team. I'll pass things over to the president of Triland, who's here, Rich Doobie, who will talk about some background and experience of Triland and talk about the vision that he has for the redevelopment of the Hub Shopping Center. Then I'll come back up, talk about financial overview, and talk about projected benefits to each of the taxing jurisdictions with respect to the project, and then we'll stand for questions. Here with the developer team, as I mentioned, Rich Doobie, president of Triland, will be up in just a moment to introduce himself. Along with me, one of my associates, Colin Bram, who's a director at IRR, is here as well as our legal counsel, Dave France, with the Stinson Law Firm. And with that, I'll pass things over to Rich Doobie.
Well, good evening. Thank you. Some of you I've met, some of you I haven't, so thank you very much for taking the time tonight to listen to what we have to say about the Hub Shopping Center and the program we put together. So I'll make my comments relatively brief. My company's 44 years old. I own 100% of the stock. We've been developing shopping centers in 8 states around the Midwest and the Southeast, based in Chicago. 25 people are on the staff at the moment. We've completed 50 redevelopments, about 8.6 million square feet of space and about $670 million worth of investment. We're a full service company, so we have acquisitions, leasing, construction, accounting, finance, capital markets, property management, and of course HR, which always takes up way too much time in the day, but a necessary evil. We talked about the Hub being anchored by a supermarket. It's Price Chopper, and it's the McKeever family who is behind this particular Price Chopper. Triland's core business, and what I just told you about, 90% of our transactions are done with supermarkets. Yes, sir. I can, yes, I will do that. I was told I have to be careful with how I move that mic around. If I get the wrong piece, I break it. So I'll okay. So my background's in the supermarket business. I was with Jewel Food Stores for my early part of my career, and another chain of supermarkets up in Canada by the name of Loblaw Companies, who's now the largest food chain in the Canadian environment. So these are just some of the names we've dealt with in states like Kansas, Indianapolis, Michigan, Wisconsin, and we're down in Atlanta as we speak now. We just finished a major project there. We've also been in Kansas City since 2004, and those are 4 of our projects that we've done. We've been at Overland Park, Kansas at 95th and Antioch. We've been at 10 Quivira. That was a Price Chopper anchored center at Shawnee Mission Parkway in Quivira. We've done a small center at 127th and Merlin, and we did a deal in Blue Springs where we sold the Kmart to the Hy-Vee company. We couldn't get together on a deal, so we ended up selling them the project. This is what Cherokee South, this is Overland Park, what it looked like before we developed it on your left and when we finished it on the right. This happens to be 10 Quivira Plaza, what we did at Shawnee Mission Parkway and Quivira. So let's just talk a little bit about why we like Independence and why we like the Hub Shopping Center. It was originally built in '72 as a discount store, a Woolco. It then became a Walmart. The Price Chopper people took it over in 1996, and that's what it is today. The Firestone building and the Burger King building were built in 1990, and the project's 160,000 square feet with those two buildings. Its total site size is about 16 acres. Its tenants, there's 11 tenants with 2 existing vacancies, so the project is 50 years old. It truly has seen a life cycle that's been obviously very good to the community and to itself, but it is. It's what we like. We look for stuff like that and like to improve it. So this is the way the project looks today. Sorry, I have a small thing on my screen. I wasn't sure if it was back there. But if you look at the main part of the shopping center, the Price Chopper itself is in the northern part of the center. Anchoring the south side is Oak Street Health. That's the newest tenant that came in just before we bought it, and we bought this property in February of '22. On the right is Advanced Automotive, closest to the north, and then there's 2 outbuildings there with the Burger King building and the Firestone building out in the parking lot. This is the way the project looked in September of this year. That's after the 40,000-foot building that had Red Rocks, I think it's Red Rocks, that was out there for many, many years. That building was demolished, and this was taken at the time just before the Quick Trip started construction. So let me tell you a little bit about what we see as the future, our vision for the Hub Shopping Center. Our proposal, which will show you some renderings of what it intends to look like, is the building facade and reservation and size of those facades will be raised so it has more presence to the street and a better signage possibility. All the roofs, the parking lots, sidewalks, all being replaced. Organize the traffic flow. Those of you that may use the project, it's a free-for-all out there. I mean, you can literally kill yourself walking or driving through that parking lot. There's not a lot of. It was built 50 years ago, and that's the way they did it at that point in time. We're going to add new high-impact landscaping, shopping center identification signs on both 291 and 23rd Street, which don't exist today. We're going to add 4 new out parcels to bring new business into the community. We're going to downsize the existing Price Chopper store, and I'm going to share with you a little bit of detail of what that looks like. But they presently operate in 86,000 square feet. They lease 104,000 square feet, and we're going to downsize that supermarket to the present sizes of that's more contemporary to 70,000 feet. And to give you some sense of what that might be, the Hy-Vee store on 23rd Street is about 67,000 square feet, so there'll be duplicate sizes. And then we're going to add new LED high-intensity site lighting out in the parking lot. So here's the site plan of what I just told you about. If you look at the yellow buildings, those are the 4 new outlots that we're bringing in, 2 on 23rd Street and 2 along Hub Drive. The blue line that you see there, the blue box, represents approximately 17,000 feet of the existing Price Chopper store that we're going to demolish to allow for the 2 outbuildings to be placed on 23rd Street. The next green line that you see on the plan, that's what Price Chopper presently operates in, because I'll take you through a different plan that shows you where Advance on here is now. But that green line represents their existing footprint. When you walk in the store, that's what you shop inside of. And then you see we've added another line, and it's called it the new Price Chopper demising wall. And that brings that store, that box, from 86,000 feet to 70,000 feet, and in the blue line, it's the 17,000 feet that get demolished. Here's a little better representation, maybe a closer look at what I was talking about. You look from the top arrow, that's the 104,000 feet they lease. Then the next arrow down is the 86,000 feet they operate in, and the next line down is what they plan to do inside the store. So when I talk and show you what we're planning to do on the outside of the store, Price Chopper is doing a significant major remodel inside. In fact, they told me this afternoon before I was here, I was in a meeting with the McKeevers, and they said, you won't be disappointed. It's going to be as new on the inside as it is on the outside. And that's important for a lot of reasons. We really don't want to do things to buildings that we don't have the major tenants upgrading their facilities to be the same thing as we see on the outside of the premises. And then if you just look at some of the lower pictures, those are generally what it's going to look like when Price Chopper gets reduced in size, and you'll see some of the other renderings we have of this building. So here's what we look at as a finished product. And as you can see, the Quick Trip is on the corner, which is almost ready to open. I would think they'll open sometime in the next few weeks. And then you get a general feel for how the buildings are being realigned. The outbuildings that I showed you, the two on 23rd Street, the Burger King is being repositioned from its present location to the north, so it'll be demolished. That building is now 33 years old. And then there's two buildings to the south. Here's the appearance of Price Chopper. So this represents some of the newest Price Choppers that are being built in the Kansas City environment. This is a look from 23rd Street towards the south. So you can see the two outbuildings on 23rd Street, which are on the right. You can see the front half of the Burger King building, which is repositioned to the north in one of their new prototypes. This is just how we show you the size of the facades that we're putting here, so you have a better visibility off of 291 and 23rd Street. And that just continues on through bringing a contemporary look through the rest of the property. So our repositioning statement is really made up of six items. We want to improve the appearance. We want to make the environment contemporary so that it attracts the existing customers want to come back, and the new customers that have passed it by decide they're going to stop in and see what's new. We want to attract the new customers and new tenants through the outbuildings that we're planning to build and provide additional places for which these customers can shop. And the new buildings, in our opinion, will set the tone for Independence. There's, in our opinion, some significant opportunities here besides the hub, where this type of opportunity and the use of the various economic incentives that you're considering tonight would help move some of those projects from back in the day to something in the new millennium. And at that point, I'm going to turn this over to John Hanson, who's going to talk about how this development looks by the numbers.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, just to run through some of the financing numbers with respect to the project and answer the primary question, why is TIF needed for the redevelopment of the Hub Shopping Center to deliver the vision that Rich just described? The total estimated investment to deliver the vision that Rich just outlined to you is approximately $36 million. The project's estimated return on investment without any incentives doing that plan would be 0.53%. So we've got a major financing gap to resolve in order to deliver that project. What we're proposing in the TIF plan and cost-benefit analysis that you have in front of you is a set of economic development tools as follows. Clearly, the TIF portion is a clear focus of our discussion tonight. David Martin reviewed with you how that works with the 50% pilots, 50% eats aspect. We're proud of that particular feature in that it solidifies the tax revenue to the taxing jurisdictions where they are today with respect to property and sales taxes. And then on a dollar for dollar basis, there's a share going, $1 going for each dollar generated, half of that going to the taxing jurisdictions, half going to the project. In addition to tax increment finance, we wanted to give you the complete picture in the TIF plan of what we're proposing to do. So within the TIF plan, you'll see information about a CID, a Community Improvement District, as well as a TDD, a Transportation Development District, both of which we're proposing for the project to implement a 1% sales tax on each of them for a total of 2%. In addition to the CID sales tax, we're proposing an up to 50-cent per square foot CID special assessment. A special assessment is an additional amount that appears on the property tax bill by the CID and is paid by the property owner. In addition to the TIF, CID, and TDD, we're requesting some fee waivers from the city in the amount of $50,000 and Chapter 100 sales tax exemption so that the materials that go into the redevelopment of the project can be purchased sales tax exempt. When pulling that host of tools together and looking at the financing analysis again, the return on incentives increases from 0.5% up to a financeable 10.2% for the project, something that we believe is achievable and will be attractive to the lenders and the equity needed to deliver the project. To outline that a little more specifically, the sources of funding, here's a graphic to represent the total investment, $36 million. Approximately 7% of that are the pure TIF and TIF pilots and TIF EATs for the project, leaving the balance, 93% of the project, to be funded by private investment and what I'm calling the add-ons, the CID and TDD. To break that down a little more precisely, in the sources of funds, the $2.6 million of financing proceeds for the TIF represents about 7% of the project. The cumulative total of the CID and TDD sources represent about 26% of the project, or a little over $9 million, with the balance of 67% being funded by private investment. The benefits to the taxing jurisdictions are outlined in the cost-benefit analysis. I've clipped this table into the presentation so you can take a look at that. These are the projected property taxes and sales taxes to each taxing jurisdiction over the 23-year period of the TIF. The benefit to each taxing jurisdiction is summed both with the redevelopment and assuming the development doesn't happen, with the difference being the net benefit. So for example, the city's projected net benefit over a 23-year period is $5 million. The county's benefit, $3.5 million, so on and so forth. All taxing jurisdictions total have an estimated $26 million benefit. When deducting the state's $16 million, that leaves approximately $10 million of additional property and sales tax going to local taxing jurisdictions over the life of the TIF. The year immediately following the TIF expiration, this slide shows the annual benefit to each of the taxing jurisdictions on an annual basis after the TIF rolls off. So for example, the city is estimated to have approximately $600,000 of new revenue coming to it in that first year after the TIF expires, the county $300,000, so on and so forth, with a total to all taxing jurisdictions of over $2 million per year. So what's a summary of some of the benefits that, as we see it, with respect to the redevelopment of the project? First, approval of this financing plan allows us to get going, to finish negotiations with the grocer, start to implement the facade improvements, all the things that Rich just outlined that he would like to see happen with the property. An approval of this allows us to start moving forward with that. Total private investment into the community of $36 million, as we mentioned. That creates $380,000 in new annual tax revenue to all local taxing districts, starting with stabilization of the project, with $180,000 of that going to the City of Independence. As I mentioned a couple of slides ago, $10 million to all local taxing jurisdictions over the 23-year period. We create over 150 construction jobs with the redevelopment of the Hub Shopping Center. We retain existing jobs and produce new opportunities with the new retailers and new pad sites to come to the shopping center. We preserve and revitalize the grocer as a solid anchor to this portion of the community, and this seizes on the critical opportunity that we have to redevelop the shopping center at this point. What are some of the advantages of the proposed plan? So first, the plan does not call for the city or taxing jurisdictions to be responsible for any payment of debt service of financing. We feel that's very important. The implementation of this financing plan enables the project to do well, but it doesn't require the city or any taxing jurisdiction to be responsible for any debt service payments. Likewise, there's no payment risk to the city or any of the other taxing jurisdictions. There's no guarantee of revenues by the city or other taxing jurisdictions. The plan does call for issuance of bonds for the project, but the City of Independence will not be the issuer of those bonds. We will seek to utilize the Industrial Development Authority or another eligible issuer, but it will not be the City of Independence issuing the bonds. And lastly, on this slide, the financing plan before you in the TIF plan and the cost-benefit analysis aligns with the city's economic development policy. Importantly, on this slide, the tax base that is going to all taxing jurisdictions on the property tax side and the sales tax side remains with the taxing jurisdiction. So that base is frozen and continues to go to taxing jurisdictions. And only the incremental revenue, sales and property tax revenue above that base gets split 50-50. Again, this project is funded approximately 7% by TIF revenue, and that's quite a bit below the maximum in the economic development policy of 15 to 20%. The overall plan that you have in front of you has been subject to independent review, not just from our team, the developer team, but from your legal counsel, your financial advisors. And so we're happy to have answered those questions as we've gone along in the process to vet our assumptions and the information that you have before you. And finally, this facilitates the redevelopment. We very much want to get started implementing the plan that Rich outlined, and we appreciate your time this evening. With that, we respectfully request, Mr. Chair, members of the commission, that tonight you consider a recommendation of approval to the City Council of the Hub TIF plan, as well as naming TL Hub LLC, the owner of the shopping center owned by Tri-Land, to be named as redeveloper. And with that, we stand ready, myself, Rich, Dave Francais, Colin, we're all prepared to answer any questions that you might have of us. And thank you for the opportunity to present to you this evening.
Thank you. Are there questions from the commission?
Mr. Cooney, I have a question, which I'm not able to see any of the presentation as far as the visual concerns. What about the entrance to this shopping center from the 23rd Street? Currently, there's a very narrow entryway off 23rd Street into that parking lot. Will that be improved?
Yes, we've spoken to the city about that. We have a traffic engineer, and that will be improved. The throats, when you come in that property now, if you're familiar with it, obviously you are, there's a very short curb that takes you in, and then you have traffic crisscrossing in front of you. That is going to be extended, I think it's 40 feet or 50 feet, to align the traffic in a movement to the south off of 23rd Street. So yes, it is under design as we speak.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Yes, just for clarification, the TIF will last for 23 years, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
No,
You guys, on Exhibit 7, your evidence of commitments to finance. As I read this is more of a letter of interest. How far have you gotten in your discussions with a possible lender to finance the project? And what terms have you gotten an actual term sheet?
No, there's
Other
not.
than
There's
this-
not an actual term sheet yet. Until we put the full capital stack together, it's moving in the wrong direction to start the bank or the lender to do that. This will be most likely a private lender. What you have there is a letter from Inland Bank, who's the existing lender on the property. They were the acquisition lender and want to be the construction lender. Once we understand, have been in conversation with them since they put the loan on the property in February of 22. So depending upon our outcome here today, that starts the continual process now of putting the hard numbers on the paper and putting the financing together.
Okay, and then another question along the lines on financing. I understand you guys are going to monetize this and bond it up front.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Now, to do that, is there any kind of performance that will need to be done for that to get bonded up front? Completion of construction, certain NOI achievement, or is there somebody out there that will go ahead and bond it up front? And then along those lines, if not, how will you bridge then the financing of those revenues until they get put in place?
Yeah, excellent question. Thank you for that, Commissioner. So let me start by saying that there will be a phased approach to the project, depending on how quickly we can garner interest in the pad sites and things of that nature. Upon approval, we will work on the core inline portion of the center, including the downsize of the grocer, improvement of the facades, things of that nature. But the pad sites will come as the market dictates. We'll move as quickly as possible. But we will bring together whenever we do a bond financing, we'll be able to put together a very clear picture to bond investors. And if we don't, then bond investors won't buy the bonds. But we'll put a very clear picture together of the revenue streams to retire those bonds. Those revenue streams will be estimated by a third party, not based on our own projections, but based on a third party's projections. And what bond investors will be interested to know at that phase is what is committed to the project. Has the grocer signed and extended a long-term lease? What's the lease status of the remainder of the tenants in the inline space? And what pad sites, if any, are committed and ready to go forward with the project? In addition to that, bond investors will want to know what is the cost of the project and ensuring that it is subject to a guaranteed maximum price contract, so that when they purchase the bonds, they know that we have a full capital stack to complete the project or the portion of the project that we're ready to move forward with at that phase. Those are similar concerns that the lender will have as well. The lender wants to know what are the projected bond proceeds, what is the status of leasing, NOI, et cetera. But there will be a clear demarcation between the collateral. The lender will be interested in the value of the real estate, the net operating income from the tenants. The bond investors will be very much concerned with the CID, TIF, and TDD revenue streams that will service that bond. But at any juncture, when we're ready to go do that financing, we will have a very clear picture of that, and we'll demonstrate a full capital stack at that stage so that all investors in the project know that the project is indeed ready to go and has full funding for that portion of the project.
I appreciate the response, but let me make sure
Sure.
I understand that. Let me give my background, you guys. I'm a commercial banker for 45 years and headed up commercial real estate lending for a couple of the national banks here in Kansas City during that time. And I've worked with Dave many times on previous projects. So if what I'm hearing, for the city to move forward, in the redevelopment plan, it says that there is financing commitment, as I understand this. So on the pilots and the EATs and the CID and the TDD revenues, will the bond then be in place before the project starts? And if not, and Dave's ready to stand up because we've done this before, how will that be bridged?
We absolutely intend and anticipate that with the grocery store lease in place, we will be able to issue the bonds up front, so there will not be a need for a bridge financing. That will be a discounted amount because the underwriters will, of course, look at that and consider the risks involved. But we have on a number of other projects done that advanced financing and believe we will be able to accomplish that on this one, sufficient to fund the share of the redevelopment costs that need to be funded by the bond issue.
Because as I'm looking at this, the underwriting on it for everyone, That's key to this deal.
Yes. And
Those
we,
bonds have got to go in up front, or you've got a big gap
yeah.
that
And-
you'll have to bridge.
And Commissioner, our agreement that we are working on with the city, but we clearly anticipate and have seen their anticipation that there will be that funding in place, and it's a condition on moving forward that the underwriters have signed off, that we've provided evidence of the full capital stack in place before we will be able to close those bonds and proceed. So your approval will create the revenue streams that will then be directed under the redevelopment agreement to provide that financing.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I represent the school district, so school district wise, we're not interested necessarily from our funding standpoint on the sales tax, but I shop here. So I'm curious, what does this do to the sales tax rate between Price Chopper and, as you, in the aforementioned IDs, just a little bit down the road?
I'm going to answer that question, Commissioner, from the standpoint that Hy-Vee and Independence, I'm not sure if it's the one here on 23rd Street, used a form of TIF and sales tax. I know they did the one on Nolan Road to the south. I don't know if they did here. But we will probably be at the point in time when both are instituted, probably close to a point above them, 1%.
Yeah, and so to put that into some context, for a $100 purchase, there would be a $1 difference.
Other questions? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it. I think that concludes the presentation of the plan. We'll open up then the hearing for any public comments. Ma'am, would you please identify yourself?
Certainly. Lucy Young, 2320 Viking Drive, Independence, Missouri, 64057. I live exactly 1.5 miles to this grocery store, and I too shop here as well. And I moved to Independence in 1993, and when I bought my house was a bit of a wreck, and right next door was a house that was fully remodeled. And I insisted on buying the house that was a bit of a wreck because I saw the potential, much like I believe this development team does with the Hub Drive shopping center. What I'd like you to consider with this is that Independence Common, Independence Center, Nolan Fashion Square, and Marketplace, just to name a few, are some of the shopping centers in this town that are desperately in need of development by their landlords. The number one complaint I got on city council was the fact that there's too many empty buildings. Well, there's not too many empty buildings. There are too many landlords that refuse to invest in the property and to bring them up to the standard that people expect today. And if we had more people that were willing to upgrade their properties, then that would keep the area more vital. This is the geometric center of the city. There's a lot of development coming this way. And so we need to keep this area thriving. And as it's been said, this is a large grocery store, and I know the McKeevers have invested heavily. While we're in there shopping, we've seen all the big refrigerators that they're getting ready to install. And people like to go where it's new, where it's clean, and this store will certainly fit the bill. The McKeevers have been very good with employees as well. I go in there maybe 4, 5, 6 times a month, and I see employees that have been there for well over a decade that tells me that they are probably well paid or they wouldn't stay. So you might be wondering why, with 92% of the businesses filled, why you should endorse this plan. I say to you, if you don't, what's going to be the alternative? Will the Price Chopper leave? What will fill that hole? We've got a J.C. Penney's down there that has sat vacant for the longest time with no prospect whatsoever of being filled. Do we need another hole in this town that large on a main drag where thousands of people pass on a daily basis? I would appreciate it. When I was on council, I voted down several TIFs that I didn't think have merit. I believe this project has merit, and I would appreciate it if you would come forward and vote to approve this project. Thank you.
Other public comment? Seeing none, we will close the public comment portion of the hearing. Ms. Martin, did you want to make one other presentation? I thought you said earlier that you had something else to say.
Sure. And I'll go ahead and discuss the resolution that's going to be in front of you as well. So this project does come with a recommendation to vote in favor from city staff. City staff has worked with a developer to sculpt this plan submission in a manner that produces both the sharing with the taxing jurisdictions that has been previously discussed and also some public project components that will be beneficial for the surrounding area. The resolution that you're going to be asked to consider essentially complies with the TIF Act in terms of making certain findings with respect to blight and the components of the plan, and then recommends to City Council the approval of the plan, the redevelopment area, the blight finding, and the designation of the developer.
All right, thank you. Are there questions from the commissioner or discussion from the commissioners?
Do I push this to talk, or can you hear me? I think you can. This is not really discussion, it's just a comment about the project, because I think that this shopping center was built when I was in high school. I think Charlie and I remember who built it, and we used to shop there, and I think we got our driver's licenses over there at the Department of Revenue, but it's in badly need of improvement, and it does. That shopping center anchors, like Mrs. Young said, that part of the community. It really is needed. And from my standpoint, I think this is one of the best projects for the TIF Commission I've seen in a number of years, one of the best projects. So I represent the Independent School District. I did talk to Dr. Hurl a couple times, including this afternoon, about this, and as you may know, he has submitted a letter of support for the passage of this, and so I want to reiterate that and just say I would be in favor of this becoming a reality to pass this.
Thank you. Other comments, questions, or discussion? All right. Is there a motion to adopt the proposed resolution?
Mr. Chair, this is Ron Brew. I move approval resolution 2023-01.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Any further discussion? Mr. Scannell, you're going to call the roll?
Sure thing.
Thank you.
My mic's not working, so I have to use my dad.
Yes.
Commissioner Clifford,
Yes.
Commissioner Finke? Yes. Commissioner Robertson,
Yes.
Commissioner Mason,
Yes.
Commissioner Brew,
Yes.
Commissioner
Yes.
Commissioner Zuturo,
Yes.
Commissioner Conley,
Yes.
and Chair Cooney.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. There being no more business before the commission, we're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.